time ago. I won't say how many years, but she was always very supportive of me, and that was before I was running for office. And we'll never forget that. And I appreciate it. And great job. Thank you all very much. I met Joe at a place. It was a very sad day. It was Dover. Dover is the Air Force base where large planes come in, very, very sadly come in. And there were a number of people, and I said, so we're waiting backstage, back of the room with the colonels and generals and everybody. And I said, so why are you here? He said, I'm waiting for my wife to come in. And that was a very sad thing. I knew immediately what he was talking about. And we spoke for 20 minutes, and I said, you got to go through this period. It's a horrible thing, but you have something very special. I said, you ought to run for politics someday. I thought it was a little bit pushy of me to do that. This wasn't the right time. But that incredible woman's looking down on him right now, and she's very proud. But I said, you ought to run for politics sometime. And I guess he took me seriously. Because like a couple of years later, I hear this guy, Joe Kent. I said, is that the same one that was running a long time ago? And he was running against a person who voted to impeach me. I said, this guy is great, I like him. And then somebody else who frankly was, pretty well respected in all fairness, and started off with a lead. And I endorsed Joe as nobody, I never had even a doubt. Wouldn't that be terrible if I say, you ought to run on that day of all days, you ought to run, and then I say, I'm going to endorse somebody that writes books, that writes children's books. So I said, I'm going to pass on that. But I endorsed Joe, and he's been like a rocket ship. I mean, he's being talked about all over the country. He does fantastically on television. I watched his interviews. I love what he says. But he's a strong guy. He's a handsome guy. I said, that guy was good looking, had the whole package. Usually it's not my deal to get into that. But he has the whole package, and I think he's going to have a fantastic career. His polling has been very good. They have a jungle primary, which is always crazy. You never know what the hell's going to happen, right? So that's why you can't take any minutes off. But I think Joe's going to do really well. He's leading right now, fairly substantially. All the help he can get, you got to give him. But he's a special person. It was amazing, because I don't know if I've ever said that to somebody so quickly. I'm with him for a little while. Totally inappropriate because of the timing, but really appropriate because she would be so proud and is so proud looking down. But I thought it would be really, when am I going to meet people like this? And you don't meet them often. And I said, run for office someday. And as soon as he announced it, I went through hell on that one. You remember all the political stuff? They all wanted me to support the one and then the other. The one was immediately out, right, Joe? The one that raised the hand, I'll impeach him. Oh, that's right, I'm supposed to endorse. Can you imagine? I actually had people, could you possibly forgive her, take it out of your heart and forgive? I said, no, thank you. No, thank you. So she never had much of a chance. I think Joe felt confident. And the other woman, there's some talent there, but there's not even a contest. So I think Joe's got an incredible future. He's got to win this race, help him out. It's an honor to have all of you at Mar-a-Lago. This is a special place. I used to say ground zero, but after the World Trade Center, we don't use that term anymore. But this is the place where everybody wants to be, and I see we just had the great governor of South Carolina here. He was a big fan of Joe's, so they said hello. But this was built from 1925 to 1929, and by Marjorie Meriwether Post, and E.F. Hutton was her husband. When E.F. Hutton talks, everyone listens. You remember the famous? And this is the great estate in Palm Beach. This is the greatest of them all. Actually, there were 7. And the other 6 were knocked down, and 20 houses were built on them, or thereabouts. And they really appreciate that we were able to save this, and it's become a club, and it's become very, very successful. And I only do this for some people, very few people, as Kimberly and Don would know. And Don, I want to thank you very much for being here. Don was with me, and we were in Texas, and I actually got to hear a full speech from Don because I got a little early, and he preceded me at the small rally. They had a 5,000 person rally of elites. They were elite, 5,000 elites, right? But they had a big one of 87,000 people. But I got to watch Don, and for the first time fully, from beginning to end, and you really did a fantastic job. So really, amazing. So whatever you can do, and I use this very seldom, really in the kind of position that I want to do this, because it's a special place, and to use it for somebody running for office, it has to be a very special person. So it's my honor to introduce Joe, and Joe could say a few words, and if you want to ask a few questions, that would be okay with me, and I'm sure it would be okay with Joe. The only one that can't take questions is Biden, because he can't answer them. So we can't ask him any questions. I always say, they never treated me that way, sir. What about this? He can't answer. Oh, that was a great answer. He gave a great answer. But I'd like to introduce Joe to say a few words. A very incredible guy, and with a tremendous future, in my opinion. Right now, he's only thinking about Congress, and maybe he'll be there for a number of years, and we don't know what's going to happen, but I think this man has a tremendous future, a very special person. Thank you very much. Come on over, Joe.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. President. Thank you so much, Don Jr. and Kimberly. And thank all of you for being out here. This is absolutely amazing. I know a bunch of you came out from the district all the way from Washington State. I can't thank you enough. All the people from the district, absolutely amazing. People from all over the country, people who I just met for the first time, because you know what the stakes are. You know what's ahead. What President Trump represented, what his movement, our movement represented, was an assault to the ruling class that has forgotten about the men and the women of this country and have forgotten about what this country is all about. The ruling class, they want unchecked illegal immigration, they want to ship our jobs overseas, and they want endless war, because they don't want Americans, the American people, the backbone of this country that built this nation, to have a seat at the table. When President Trump came on the scene and punched through the Republican Party and then punched through the Democrat Party, that flipped the ruling class on its head. And he brought the American people, the hardworking men and women of this country, into the room and into the part of the deal-making system. And that right there was what the ruling class could not stand. I had a front row seat to our endless wars. I served for a little bit over 20 years, 11 combat tours. I watched administration after administration, Bush, Obama, Republicans, Democrats. They'd say different things, but the end result was the same. They wanted us overseas and bleeding out for the benefit of the military-industrial complex. Made no qualms about it. When President Trump came in, he said, hey, we have to get rid of the terrorism threat, we have to get rid of ISIS, and we have to bring the Iranians to heel, and we have to get out of these conflicts. And that's why they had to come so hard after him. After the mission that my late wife was part of took out every inch of ground that ISIS controlled, thanks to his leadership, we had fought them under Obama and under Bush before. Under Obama, we could barely fight back. We were in a stalemate against ISIS. Within less than a year, thanks to President Trump's decisive action, we took out every scrap of ground that ISIS controlled. And then he did the most remarkable thing. Exactly. And now we see what actual weakness looks like with Joe Biden. Between Afghanistan and then ISIS and these terrorists, they know we're weak, and now they're starting to bring terrorism back here to America. We saw it in Texas. But one of the most significant things that President Trump did, and this is really when we saw the establishment and the deep state turn against him, he tried to get us out of the endless wars. It would have been an affront to the military-industrial complex. So Secretary of Defense Mattis and a bunch of other unelected bureaucrats quit, ran to the media, and told a bunch of lies. The end result was our troops remained deployed in Syria. A month later, a month after they were supposed to be out of that conflict zone, my wife and 3 other great Americans were killed. That's when my life changed forever. That's when I thought, hey, I'm just gonna have to step aside and take care of my kids. I was serving in the government. I was overseas when she was killed, fighting terrorism as well. But I thought, hey, I'm just gonna move back to the Pacific Northwest, take care of my children. And then we saw what happened. 2020, the COVID lockdowns, the unchecked riots incited by the left, incited by the woman sitting in the vice president's seat right now, Kamala Harris. They burned our country down, burned down my hometown of Portland, Oregon. And what I saw there, that unchecked violence, that political violence being used as a weapon against the American people, it's the exact same tactics I saw terrorists use overseas. It's the exact same way that I saw societies be destroyed. And then we saw all that weaponized. Big tech, mainstream media, unelected bureaucrats moving lockstep to tell us that Joe Biden won an overwhelming victory. And if we dared question it, we would be labeled as terrorists and insurrectionists, and the national security state would be turned against us. They had to do that. The ruling class had to do that because President Trump was a threat to them. That's why they had to work so hard. That's why they're still after them. That's why they're still after him. And he was right. One of the best things, Mr. President, that you ever said was that they're not after you, they're after all of us. You were just in the way. And once they got rid of President Trump, we saw they're coming after us. There's still people being deprived of their constitutional rights right now in a gulag in Washington, D.C. So what we have to do, what I knew had to happen once my Congresswoman, who in theory is a Republican, voted for the impeachment of President Trump. Before that, she voted for the certification of the election that we all knew was stolen. But she went right along with it. She shirked her constitutional duties, and then she jumped in with the mainstream media's narrative to say that there was a massive insurrection and President Trump must be impeached. When that happened, I knew we were on the cusp of losing our country. So I never intended on running for office, but I knew it was time to act. So that's why I'm in this fight, because really at the end of the day, for me personally, this is about my 2 young sons who lost their mother when they were very young. And soon I'm gonna have to look them in the eyes and explain to them that this is the country that she gave her life for. The state we're in right now, I can't do that. So I have to go forward, and I want to continue to clean out the establishment, go after our permanent ruling class in the Republican Party and in the Democrat Party, fight Joe Biden's agenda as hard as we possibly can for 2 years. When we take back the House and we take back the Senate, our job is to go to war with the Biden administration, kill off their agenda, impeach Joe Biden, rigorously use oversight. That's right. That agenda doesn't move forward one step further. We've had enough of Republicans that surrender. Every single failing that's going on right now has rhino fingerprints all over it. From the crisis on the southern border, we could have had the border wall built, but Republicans like Jamie Herrera Butler voted to stop the construction of the southern border wall. They voted to preserve Obamacare. They voted to allow the riots to go on, prevented President Trump from deploying the National Guard. Time and time again, these weak, feckless Republicans have failed us. That stops in 2022, and we put an end to that agenda. Our job is basically to stop the bleeding and get rid of Joe Biden and his agenda, to create enough space that we can get President Trump back into the White House and then give him the House and the Senate that he deserves. Because it's really not about any one of us. It's about bringing the American people back into Washington, D.C. and controlling our destiny and restoring our sovereignty and preserving our way of life and our nation. That's the mission I'm on. I can't thank you enough, Mr. President. This is a great honor. Your family for stepping in the breach once more. I know you guys could be doing pretty much anything right now, but you're here and you're fighting for us. And I'm honored to be a part of that fight. And I'm honored to have all of you in the fight with me. Thank you very much.
Amen.
Where are you going?
Over in the corner video.
Good.
Lighting.
We love you too. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yay!
Thank you.